Hi everyone. Sorry for being a few minutes late here. We had some technical issues. We should be live now. Just give us one more minute here to quickly check if we're good to go. Awesome. Sorry about that. So we will have to make the introduction a bit shorter today to actually get started and not waste more time. It's great to have everyone here. We have a great team of panelists here on the call. Let me introduce you real quick to Gil and Ellie from Sleep AI. Ellie leading on all things science, and then Gil on the operations side of Sleep AI. From ROOK side, we have Dan and Sebas on the call. Sebas leading as head of partnerships, and Dan from the technical perspective as CTO. I have the pleasure today to be the host, and I'll be moderating a bit the session. So I'll be the one doing and making all the uncomfortable questions here for the panel today. And in order to set a bit the stage for today, we have prepared a little presentation. So if you can start pulling up the presentation, that would be awesome. So you can share this with us. And then we can go through the presentation, setting a bit the stage, and then afterwards we're shifting directly into the panel discussion. The topic for today, sleep is the next vital sign. Why sleep is so important. Sleep personally for me is an important topic. I'm a bad sleeper, but we will learn a bit more about sleep and why it is so important and how this can actually be a competitive edge for companies during today's sessions. This is also the first session. Hopefully we will do other sessions afterwards. Today, we really want to set the foundations and then we can build on top of that. And yeah, super excited to get us all started here. Whenever you're ready, Sebas, feel free to kick us off with a little presentation here, setting the ground. For everyone listening in, if there's questions, please, there's a Q&A section where you can drop your questions. At the end of the session, we will have some time to go over questions. And we'll provide answers to all of them. This session is also recorded, and we will share the presentation as well as the recording with everyone on the call today and everyone who has registered. Let's get started. Sebas, all yours.
Oh, thank you, Jonas. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Today, we are going to talk about the most underutilized signal in digital health. No, sorry. Can you see my screen? Sorry about this.
We can.
Yes. Now you can hear me.
Yep.
So sorry about that. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Sebastian Sanchez, Head of Partnership at ROOK, and we are here with Sleep AI to talk about one big idea. Sleep is already one of the most valuable health signals users generate every night, but most platforms are still not using it to its full potential. Over the next 60 minutes, we'll cover why sleep matters, what makes sleep data difficult to use at scale, and how ROOK and Sleep AI complement each other. I'll start with a quick overview, and then we'll get deeper together with Jill, Ellie, and Dan. Well, we all grew up hearing things like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, or successful people don't need rest. Hustle culture made us believe that sleeping less was a badge of honor. The science is clear. The mindset was wrong. Sleep is not a weakness. It is the most powerful recovery and performance signal that the human body can generate. If sleep is already a signal on your platform, the real question isn't where if your users are sleeping. It's whether you can do anything with the signals. Is the data complete? Is it reliable? Is it actionable? Without these three things, sleep is just another number on a dashboard. With them, it's a competitive advantage. And that's a missed opportunity because sleep connects three outcomes at once: user behavior, health outcomes, and business outcomes. Basically, it connects how users feel, how they behave, and how platforms create value. Most of the platforms are what we call sleep aware. They show sleep score on a dashboard and that's it. But there are very few that are sleep activated. What do we mean with sleep activated? This is the meaning they actually use sleep to drive decisions, and that's the gap we're trying to close today. From the scientific perspective, sleep is not only a wellness metric, it is a predictor of health, behavior, and risk. Sleep affects mood, cognition, recovery, metabolism, hormones, weight, and even mortality risk. That means sleep data can tell us something important about how someone is functioning today and what risks may emerge over time. The numbers back this up. 75% of the US population sleeps poorly. 80 to 90% of people with clinical sleep disorders are on screen. They don't even know what they are at risk. And the economic cost of insufficient sleep in the US alone is $411 billion annually. This is not a niche problem. And this is the reason we create this webinar. With ROOK, you can collect wearable data easily, but let's be honest, not all users sleep with a wearable. That's where Sleep AI comes in. They capture sleep data without a wearable, generates deeper insights, and turn them into actionables, recommendations that improves overall health. With the right data and the know-how to act on it, you can unlock new layers of experience for your users. Personalized sleep insights as recovery and readiness recommendations, smarter intervention timing, guiding sleep coaching journeys, stronger engagements, and retained flows. Why this matters for the platforms and for the users? Well, for the users, they will have a better understanding of their sleep, more personalized guidance, stronger behavior change, and earlier identification of risk. And for your platform, well, you will have higher engagement, better retention, new product experience, and differentiation in competitive markets. This can be applied across verticals like fitness platforms, digital health, mental health, employer wellness, insurance and response care, and longevity platforms. The shared message is that wearables are one of the most important foundations for modern sleep data. ROOK makes that foundation easier to access, standardize, and use it at scale. Sleep AI complements that with sleep-specific intelligence, calibration, and coverage. Together, we help platforms turn sleep signals into reliable, actionable, and scalable experience. If your challenge is accessing, integrating, or standardizing wearables and health data, this is a conversation to have with us. You can have Sandbox totally free for 20 days, and you can be testing in minutes. You need to visit tryrook.io. And if your challenge is interpreting, calibrating, or activating sleep data, Jill and Ellie will tell you more about what's possible with Sleep AI. With this foundation set, let's open to the conversation. Jonas, over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sebas. So obviously, this is a quick run through of like why sleep is important, why to talk about it now. It gives you already a bit of an idea of what ROOK brings to the table as well as what Sleep AI is doing. But we want to dive deeper. We want to break this down, and we want to really understand each aspect of why sleep is important from a user scientific perspective, why it is important today for businesses and how business can really leverage this, but also what's the friction of accessing sleep data and leveraging this in a meaningful way in different use cases. Sebas was showing already there's many different use cases from fitness to wellness to the healthcare space. And that's what we really want to dive into. With that being said, first question goes to you, Gil, and thanks so much for being here as a guest today. We appreciate you all here. From your personal perspective, why is sleep so important? Maybe you can give us a bit more your personal lens, your perspective with the expertise and what you've learned over at Sleep AI as well. That would be a good way to kick us off.
Sure. Thank you, Jonas. Good morning, everyone. Sebas mentioned that sleep is a signal. We see sleep not just any other signal. For health and wellness platform, we see sleep as a vital sign and even as their single greatest unlock. And as Sebas mentioned earlier, if you look at the US, 75% of the US population are poor sleepers. And since 2019, their online search for sleep has outpaced their search for fitness, nutrition, and mental health 24/7, 2 to 5x on average, and peaking at 5 to 10x on average every single night at 2 a.m. So the users of these platforms are voting online with what they care about. If you look at it from the platform perspective, again, sleep sits at that unique intersection of the three things that every health and wellness platform care about the most. The user behaviors, which is around, they want their users to be engaged, so they stick around long enough. When they stick around long enough, they can get the desired health outcomes. This could be a fitness outcome or a nutrition outcome or a mood outcome or a cardiometabolic or pregnancy and so on. And when those users get those outcomes, they deliver the business outcomes, which could be, conversions to subscriptions, lifetime value, new types of revenue streams, and so on. So there's clearly a very strong match between both what the users want and what the platforms need in order to deliver on their promise to both their shareholders and their users. But like any other vital sign, sleep data needs to be accessible from each and every person, trustworthy, and actionable. But when we look at sleep on the sleep kind of health and wellness platform space, we see two, maybe even three types of companies. The first one is there are some companies what we call sleep aware. These are the companies who treat sleep as just another signal. They collect some sleep data that is inconsistent from a small portion of their user base. They provide a sleep score in an app and some cryptic sleep charts, and they hope that their users know what to do about it. But if you look at the online US statistics, over 99% of US population are neither data scientists or sleep scientists, so people can't really figure things out by themselves from all this data. The second type of company is really the companies who are seeing sleep as the vital sign that it is. We call them sleep activated companies. These are companies who continuously collect trustworthy data from 100% of their users, derive actionable business and user insights, and deliver personalized, timely, and impactful experiences inside their own apps. These are the companies who are well positioned to unlock the value of sleep. Now, Sebas mentioned there are two companies. There's also like a third type. I call them sleep blind. These are the companies who don't even pull sleep data today. And we've seen even companies who don't pull activity data today. So these are the companies who don't use any objective sleep data or don't use objective sleep data to contextualize what they do and being able to act on it.
Awesome. Have you seen, Gil, that this is kind of almost like a generational shift, that sleep data has become more important for companies? Because if I'm thinking about my parents, that generation is a bit more like what Sebas showed us in the beginning, right? Like hustle culture, like you can sleep when you're dead almost. Like we have this saying even in German, like you can sleep when you're in your tomb. And that's obviously this hustle culture, which leads you to actually having less lifespan, less health span. Have you seen a shift there from generations to generations, that this topic in the last few years, or what have you observed there?
Yes, absolutely. Look, I've been in health and wellness for over 20 years and in the sleep space for over 10 years. 10 years ago, it was all about sleep apnea, insomnia, and other clinical disorders. There's a clear ROI. There's a very robust infrastructure that, distributes these solutions after they diagnose people. A few years ago, when we walked into meetings, we still had to explain to people why they should care about sleep and tie this back to their business. In the past couple of years, we don't need to do that at all. First of all, we have a daily incoming inquiry flow of companies who understand that already. And they come to us because they know that they need to have visibility into sleep. They need to be able to act on it. Look, it's very different from it's very different knowing that my sleep sucks, and I'm 75% chance that it does, and actually being able to do something about it. Because when my sleep sucks, I don't lose the weight that I want to lose. I don't reduce the stress that I want to reduce. I'm not managing my diabetes properly, hypertension, and so on. So just knowing that it sucks, it means that at least I know why therapy is not working. But that's not good enough. The goal is to change sleep and improve sleep so those other therapies will actually come to fruition.
Yeah, which is a great transition into thinking about more of the science, right? I mean, there's an aspect of it that I always love that you mentioned before, and we will talk a bit more about the business side of it. But I'm going to give a little kind of spoiler previously. Like what we always saying is not everyone is doing physical activity, right? Not everyone is going to the gym, not everyone does a run, but everyone is sleeping. Maybe some people sleep poorly, but everyone still is sleeping. So from a business perspective, that's something super valuable because it's something that you can work on with every single user of yours because everyone is passing through that experience of good or bad sleep, and you can use it in any way to kind of personalize experience and build on top of it or build great business models even around it that help you. But before we move more into the business side of things, I want to take what you just mentioned about like sleep impacts all facets of life, from recovery to brain functioning to if you're a diabetes patient, etc. So like moving a bit to the science side of things, and that one obviously goes to you, Ellie. What is really the science around sleep? It's becoming super trendy. There's books that became famous with why we sleep, and so it's been a topic where people try to understand more of the science. So maybe you can share us a bit more, like what is like the most impact areas we see good, bad sleep, and your perspective on it from a scientific perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, I feel like we've heard it a billion times that sleep affects everything, every physiological function. And I think the science is trending towards rather than just purely observation, it's actually prediction now. So how can we leverage that sleep signal as a prediction of other health outcomes? So there was a recent study out of the Stanford group, it's the Sleep FM, the Sleep Foundational Model, where they essentially looked at one night, just one night of polysomnography data in lab. And they found that with that one night of PSG data, they can predict about 130 chronic conditions with 75 to 85+% overall accuracy. I mean, it's incredible, right? That's one night. So imagine if we had retrospective wearable or non-wearable data, hundreds of nights, which we can collect. That breadth is so impressive. So what I want to do is actually, give you some specific sort of actionable examples across like the health and wellness domain that can give you a bit more flavor and nuance of what that can look like, right? Just so you could see really how deeply sleep plays a role. And one area that I'm very, very passionate about is cognition, right? Like healthy brain aging. There was a study recently from the Framingham Heart Study that found that every 1% reduction in deep sleep in older adulthood was associated with a 27% increased risk of dementia. So it's not these giant, sleep differences that are swaying health and wellness. Not to scare people, but it's these smaller sort of effect sizes in sleep that actually have a tremendous impact on our overall health. So if you're a longevity or a healthy brain aging company, imagine having again both that retrospective and prospective sleep architectural data that can improve brain biomarkers and actually beyond just the data, it could be this like therapeutic target, right? Because deep sleep is malleable, right? We can change the amount of deep sleep through behavioral tools, even some product specific tools. Another area for me that's really, really, really interesting is performance and recovery. I think a lot of us forget that actually, like the majority of our growth hormone, 70, maybe 80+% of our growth hormone is secreted during slow wave sleep, during deep sleep. And actually, the timing of someone's preferred workouts and the timing of someone's preferred sleep-wake schedule, we call this their chronotype. It actually is a really interesting and upcoming area. The whole circadian rhythm and chronotype space is really fascinating. There was a recent study just this year that showed that if you align your physical activity or workouts with your actual chronotype, that significantly improve blood pressure, LDL, VO2 max, fasting glucose, and a range of other health uh, outcomes. And that's just timing, right? That's just the
Yeah.
timing of the behavior. So imagine having this like digital sleep twin that can be used to hyper personalize, both recovery outcome metrics and performance related metrics. There's also women's health and GLP-1s and even sleep companies that aren't collecting or actually leveraging objective sleep data that can really benefit from this hyper longitudinal data that is at least actionable. Because I've said this many times before, we can measure everything, but if we change nothing, if the behavior stays the same, then we've arguably wasted someone's time. So it's about leveraging that objective data to do something, whether that's screening or coaching, right? The sleep improvement pathway, which I know we'll talk about a little bit later as well.
Awesome. And I mean, the beauty of it is from a science perspective is it's a great return on investment as well that you can show as a company, right? If you can prove out that there's actually a positive impact, and the user is feeling it even, that's the best way it can go, obviously.
Absolutely.
I always feel it's challenging sometimes to just put the science in the right perspective because often science are presenting it in a negative way. So there's a big business challenge, and that's a good way to kind of transition into the use cases a little bit. But often, obviously, science are first of all creating panic or like, oh God, like I'm sleeping 1% less, 1% lower recovery score, and this is going to be such a massive impact cognition in like the cognitive function, etc. So
I
yeah,
I will say,
maybe
just
one
to
last take on
interrupt
this.
you real
Yeah,
quick,
yeah.
it's a problem with sleep science that the majority of research today is not looking at the effects of sleep improvement and sleep extension. It's the opposite, right? Like what
Exactly
happens
the
when
point.
you're
Yeah.
sleep deprived, right? So it's a good lesson for the scientific community to actually look beyond just the negatives and what are the incredible things that happen when we do get consistent, sufficient
Yeah.
quality sleep.
Which I think is super important when we think about now use cases. And Sebas mentioned a few of the use cases already, because putting the messaging right, getting the user experience and user journey right is so important. And a lot goes around like messaging, wording, finding the right communication that is timely, that is smart, that feels personal and like adapted to my current living situation, right? So I want to just briefly touch base on a few use cases because we want to give you a better understanding of what is really possible, and maybe further down the road in the conversation we have a chance to double down on some of those. But we've seen, okay, sleep can be used in ways of personalizing coaching. So if we see recovery and sleep metrics are down, we can adapt the training session. So it's an easy exchanging maybe the training session that was planned, right? From a high intense interval class, we switch it out to more of a light shakeout run mobility session, depending on what we're seeing, or breath work, which can help obviously in terms of regulating HRV, nervous system, and so on. We can use this as a retention factor from a business perspective, and that's a use case we had. We have a client in the fitness space that is using sleep as a churn prediction mechanism. It's actually super obvious. For every night, like for 1 hour less of sleep at night, the likelihood that I show up at the gym the next morning is highly decreasing. So if I miss 2 hours of sleep, and I had a bad night's sleep, to be honest, from yesterday to today, the likelihood that I'm showing up today from a gym workout is decreasing dramatically. And with a drop in attendance, we obviously have someone on the way to churning. So it can heavily pay into the retention side. Gil, I think you wanted to add something here. Were you unmuted? Or
Yeah,
that
of
was just
course.
a
Look,
confirmation on your end. Yeah.
yeah, you provided a
Okay.
great example, right? It's now beyond the fact that you know that I'm at risk. Now imagine that you could actually create systems that reach out to me and say,
Yeah.
you had a kick-ass workout yesterday or last week, but yesterday you slept very poorly. Don't, still come in. We'll focus on your recovery tonight and we'll
Yeah.
take it from there tomorrow. It makes the experience a lot more proactive, a lot more personalized, a lot more timely, and that's what users want. Users
Yeah.
expect that from us today. It's no longer it's no longer a nice to have capabilities. People want to share data with people who know what to do about it for them.
100%. So it becomes timely, it becomes personalized, and that's what kind of really drives engagement.
Yeah.
And then we have obviously even models where we see new business models emerging. So from reimbursement models to premium offerings, etc. There's a lot possible in fitness, in wellness, in healthcare. We've seen it obviously around diabetes, obesity care with the big boost of GLP-1s. Recovery and sleep is fundamental. If you are on the drug, you need to make sure sleep and recovery. So leveraging these metrics, leveraging this data in your favor is highly important. So sleep can literally become a strategic layer for companies and the different business models. Now comes the but. What is the problem? So what is so difficult in working with sleep data? And I wanna shift here gears to you, Dan, and a bit of talking about there's the way of accessing wearable data, obviously from wearables, so like the Aura rings, the Whoops, etc. And then there's also different ways, and Sleep AI is one of the great tools here. We can dive a bit into this in just a second to access sleep data. But then first to you, when you want to access sleep data from wearables, what's the challenge? Why is this still a problem today? Why is this so complicated? Can you share a bit more there?
Yeah. Look, if you were to sleep with 3 wearables today, and you will wake up in the morning with 3 different sleep readings and 3 different sleep scorings and 3 different experiences, how do you know which one to trust more, and how do you actually know how much did you sleep at all? You have no idea. And when you look at the market today, best case 40% of users are on a wearable at kind of developed OECD countries. Most of them don't sleep with their devices at night. It's charging, it's uncomfortable, they forgot, whatever the reason is. And therefore it means that those health and wellness platform effectively get sleep data from very few users.
Yeah.
Now, and when they do get that sleep data, as I mentioned earlier, those data sets look very different. So they're inconsistent in how they measure sleep. And therefore, if you have a large user base, some of them will use the wearable 1, some wearable 2, and it goes, we collect data today from over 500 different wearables, right? So if the entire user base is using wearables that measure sleep differently, how do you truly know how they sleep, and how do you create consistent experiences that apply to the entire user base? So this is the challenge. It's really the availability, the utilization, and then the consistency of the data.
Awesome. We will get to this a little bit more with like what harmonization really looks like and how can we actually get to that common ground to act on. But to you, Dan, quickly on like wearables, integration of wearables, what's the challenge out there? Why is it still complicated to access the data from all these different devices?
Yeah, I will follow on Gil comment, Jonas. I think wearables have been here for a long time now. I remember my first Withings device that I had to remove it from my wrist and put my finger to measure my O2. And to be honest, the measure was pretty bad. I mean, like really bad. It always was like higher than 90%. And so wearables have a story, and they have become better with time. And that's a thing. And we are maybe not at the highest peak of development, but physicians, people are really taking measurements that it's worth to look at. So following on Jill's comment, I come from the brain-computer interfaces world. So for me, the best wearable is one that you put inside your brain, and it's always measuring everything, no matter if you go to sleep or you wake up or you don't have battery. But yeah, that's not possible yet. Let's face it. So we have a reality. We have batteries that died. We have even the Apple Watch. The battery only lasts for 1 day. There's improvements there. There's now wearables that has battery for 20 plus days. But yeah, everyone, even we have more than 1 million users connected, and you don't know how many cases we have heard about I don't like the data that I see on my wearable because I don't know what to do. I just see that I'm not reaching my goals. So I take off my wearable and put it on the shelf. So yeah, there's a lot of areas of opportunity here, and standardization and normalization, Jonas, like you said, I think is the first one to tackle. Everyone is
Okay.
doing their best. I can assure you that. Whoop, Garmin, Fitbit, Polar, every Aura, everyone is doing the best they can. But we need a higher authority that sets the ground and says, hey, now that you have data that is worth looking to because you are getting really close to medical device grade measurements, let's set a common ground. Let's set a standard for wearable data. And then how you measure things, the specificity and the accuracy of the measurements, and that's how I think that's the next step. Apple and Google are doing some, and Huawei are doing some great things there, but again, they're doing the best they in their perspective, and yeah, we are working with the IEEE on setting a standard for these kind of things. So yeah, there's a lot of things, great things coming, but it's going to take a while.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So like, sorry, you want to jump
Maybe
in?
to
Yeah,
add
go ahead,
one more
please.
thing to this. Dan mentioned that, everyone's doing their best. It's clearly it's better to have some data than no data, right? It's
Agreed.
clear. At least you know how you trend. But I think the big difference when it comes to sleep is that, you can take any phone today, from a $20 phone to a $1,500 phone, and you can get your steps pretty accurately. A step is a step is a step everywhere you go. When it comes to sleep, it's not the same way. Sleep science and technology are very complex. We spun out of ResMed, the world's largest clinical sleep company, and it still took us 8+ years doing only sleep to develop, mature, validate, and publish our technology to do that. So imagine companies who are doing so many other things in addition to, and sleep is just one of those things that no one can do that. And that's what makes us very unique around, and that's why we believe that we have, very unique capabilities to offer.
100%.
I agree.
100%.
Yeah, the sleep is one of the latest metrics that the wearables are measuring. iOS and the Apple Watch implemented just a few generations ago, and they just released like a year ago the scores for sleep. So yeah, it's one of the youngest metrics that the wearables are measuring.
Yeah. So then just one follow-up question here. You're saying Apple Health, Health Connect, they already aggregate a lot of the data. Is that not enough then? Like why is there still a need to integrate all of the devices then to make access to the data in a meaningful way?
Yeah, Google and Apple are general purpose companies. Apple is a bank. Apple is a health information company. Apple is a hardware, an application company. So they don't focus on just one thing. So their approach is pretty broad. Google does the same thing, and Huawei that also has a kit, and Samsung that also has a kit for putting all the data together. Again, they are doing the things the way they think that's better, but that's not standardization. We need a higher hierarchy organism that sets the ground to build on top of this.
Yeah. And also, yeah, go ahead, please.
And maybe to add one more thing to this is that, Apple and Google transfer whatever data that already exists, and they're fully dependent on wearables today, right?
Yeah.
If you don't own a wearable, which makes you 60% of the population, and if you own a wearable and don't sleep with it, which makes you the vast majority of wearable owners, there's essentially no sleep data available for you. And the second challenge here is really about on one hand, how do we standardize the data that we get from different wearables on a population level, but also how do we essentially enable each and every user to collect sleep data, all right? And sleep data that's consistent, reliable, actionable. And this is now the good news is that with all these challenges that we've discussed, is that there's still one device that people can't live without, and it's already in their bedroom, and that's their smartphone. All right. And this is where our sleep sense technology, which essentially transforms smartphones into passive sleep sensors, come in to bridge the gap. You don't need an additional hardware. So if you don't own a wearable, you don't need to buy one if you want to do that. There's no need for any user interaction. We don't need to have the user to do anything in order for the sleep sensing to work. And there's really no listening or recording of bedroom sounds like other companies do. And our data shows that 93% of users will not allow to record their bedrooms in order to measure their sleep. So it's a software-only solution that anyone with a smartphone can start using today.
So give us the spiel, Geo. I take my phone, I leave it on my night desk, and that's all I need to do with the app to kind of track the sleep, or like how does it work? Like give us a bit more of a spiel here, like of how this is going, how this works. Yeah.
So SleepSense essentially uses a combination of phone-based sensors. So there are measurement elements and very advanced predictive and inference modeling. So the combination of these sensors and those predictive models, which on one hand predict certain elements based on your historical sleep data, as well as based on lookalikes, essentially together they provide you with a really good understanding of how you're sleeping every night of the week. It's not about buying a device. It's not about charging a device. All you need is your smartphone. And you get very accurate understanding of how you sleep. In December, we published a white paper around SleepSense, and now we're working on a proper publication. And as you can see there, it's very competitive when it comes to measuring time in bed, very, very close to rings, which as of now, we see them as the best form factor as far as sleep measurement.
You mean Aura rings and like Ultrahuman ring, etc.
Different rings. They all clearly measure differently, but rings as a category seems to outperform bands and watches and all that, and apps.
Awesome. Cool. I want to recap here a few things that we just listened. So obviously, wearable data is a key way into tracking sleep data. Now it's difficult still because it's fragmented. We have APIs, SDKs of all the different brands. And that's a bit like what obviously ROOK does. We help aggregating this wearable layer and data source layer. Now Sleep AI offers a solution for everyone who's not using a wearable, right? Like, and it's a reality. We still have a lot of users that don't use a wearable. While we've seen mass adoption over the last few years, there's still a lot of users that don't use it. And then there's a good percentage that's not using a wearable during the night sleep because they feel it's uncomfortable and they don't like having the wearable on that night. And that's where we see your solution comes in and can help extract data as well for those users. Now we have all this data. We're still tackling the challenge of we need to harmonize it, right? We need this harmonized layer of data because otherwise, from a business perspective, we can't act on this information. And I know you guys are putting a lot of effort into this harmonization, normalization layer that you're building. So Ellie, maybe you can share a bit more about what goes into it, why is this so important, and how this is actually moving us from, as we mentioned before, from like being a sleep aware company to a sleep activated company. How do we get closer to this activation stage? Because we need the data to be able to act on. Otherwise, it's just data, as always, right? More data is also not helpful. It needs to be actionable data. Maybe you can add a bit more context here.
I can give a high level overview as to the science and sort of the validation of some of the harmonization models that we're putting together. Maybe Gil can add a bit more context if it's useful. But really, at its core, this harmonization model is essentially making data more consistent so our partners can leverage the full power of that objective sleep data, whether it's for data visualization or coaching or screening. We know that there is this like massive device specific difference in sensing capabilities. So we used to call them validation studies. Now we call them performance evaluation studies, where we're essentially comparing a device against the gold standard, which is polysomnography. And I don't want to name drop, but I'm going to name drop because I think it's important. Garmin, for example, has among worst in class specificity. So only about 20% specificity. So they're underestimating wakefulness overnight by anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour and a half. Now imagine you're a I don't know, a chronic insomnia company and you need to understand awakenings throughout the night, it's very difficult when a device isn't accurately detecting that. On the other hand, there are software-specific solutions. Sleep Cycle, for example, has a validation or performance evaluation study showing about 50% overall specificity. So that's like a coin toss, right? Essentially, as to whether someone is asleep or awake. We are extremely proud of our performance versus polysomnography, as Gil mentioned. We spun out of ResMed, spent a lot of time validating the technology against the gold standard. We have 14 plus publications on their performance. And to my knowledge, our core measurement is one of the only software-only solutions with a performance evaluation study showing 85+% overall accuracy. And I think what's incredibly unique is that in addition to that core measurement, we have these parallel recordings across 500 plus devices, a billion hours of sleep data now. And that allows us to really make this like chaotic, sometimes inaccurate data more consistent and trustworthy across devices and models.
Awesome. That's super exciting. And then obviously with this layer in place where you get to this level of accuracy now, how do you move now from having this data to the actual action? Like what is the data points that you're mainly using, or like clients of yours? Are they looking more at outliers? Do they look at pattern shifts? How did they take the data and then move it into action? Maybe you can even just share some practical examples, because I think for the audience it's important. Okay, this sounds all fantastic, but it sometimes feels probably a bit abstract of okay, accessing the data, and there's ROOK, and then there's the way of sleep AI to extract as well data from the ones that don't have a wearable. Now data is getting harmonized. It gets to an accuracy level. I think that's the important message, right? It gets to an accuracy level where we can use this in settings of health, wellness, fitness in a meaningful way. It's not just a nice to have anymore.
Yeah.
Now it's really there, and it's going to just get better moving forward. But like how do health and fitness platforms, wellness platforms now take it into action? Like what are you seeing among your client and user base there?
Yeah. I mean, at least for me, this is the fun part, right? Because no one sleeps for the sake of sleeping, I always say, right? People sleep
Yeah.
to feel better, to look better, to think better, to perform better, to be better partners and leaders. So, most consumer sleep technologies to date, they've really stopped at that data mirror, right? That data point. It's just a data mirror and it's nothing else. And for some people, actually, that like over obsession, over quantification of sleep data without meaning or context, that can actually be detrimental. We call that orthosomnia. We're writing a paper on that right now. So, our ethos is to go beyond the sleep data, to go beyond that data to activate these sleep improvement experiences. So, for example, with that now harmonized, beautifully rich objective sleep data, we can leverage our sleep coaching APIs, for example, that actually pair objective sleep data with highly engaging, personalized, and dynamic coaching content, right? That can be used for a range of individuals. And it leverages aspects of CBTI, but unlike CBTI, which is for chronic insomnia, we are more personalized and dynamic. It's not as structured as CBTI, right? We understand what's the likely cause of someone's sleep issue and what's the sleep issue to begin with that we should be solving for. Is it sleep onset latency? Is it sleep regularity? Is it sleep duration? Is it just time in bed? People aren't affording themselves a long enough sleep opportunity window. And my team recently published a randomized control trial showing the efficacy of that coaching API, that coaching platform. So coaching is one clear avenue, right? Like leverage that objective sleep data to pair it with just in time, we call it just in time adaptive interventions, right? The ideal content nugget at the ideal time for a given user. So really proud of that. We're also really proud of our prediction models that are also device agnostic, right? These are essentially screening tools, right? So we know, 90 plus people with obstructive sleep apnea remain undiagnosed. And it's a really important pathway because you could be giving someone with sleep apnea all the sleep hygiene recommendations in the world, but that's not going to solve their core issue. So we've developed these, as a screening tool, accurate screening models that are just leveraging that objective sleep data and can support this like early identification of sleep disorders. We presented some of this research at the World Sleep Congress in Singapore, and we're going to be at the Baltimore meeting, the annual American Academy of Sleep Medicine meeting, presenting more research. And then the third, which is sort of bringing a lot of this together for us, is this like reimbursement pathway. This is more sort of on the business model as well. In 2024, we launched the Dein Schlaf app and program in Germany through their preventative health framework. And it's the first reimbursed consumer sleep improvement app in Germany and really almost in the world. It means that now 75 million publicly insured lives can actually access a validated sleep improvement program without a doctor's prescription. And I think the fact that, this path exists at all, it changes really the conversation of any platform, right? Because now we're moving away. It's this convergence of healthcare and wellness that we're seeing across the world. But now even in the United States, we've seen some early signals from the Maha Elevate program, which are sort of pointing in a similar direction. So I think for us, it's right, this end-to-end funnel, the right data, harmonized data to screen, to action, and closing that loop.
Yeah, and maybe just to add one more thing. Everything we said so far about the data collection, the harmonization, sleep sense, combine this with the coaching, which is clinically validated and reimbursed, with the screening, and even connection to care pathways, which we'll be starting to do sometime soon. You essentially have an end-to-end platform that until now was more of science fiction, right? So far, you could collect whatever sleep data you could get from people's phones and hope that it's good enough for you to act on it, if you can act on it. So now you're getting a system that can do all that for you and trigger really interesting and impactful use cases that users find engaging and rewarding, and you find also drive your business. So it's really about bringing all this together to deliver those what we call sleep activated experiences that drive those positive health and business outcomes.
Awesome. Yeah. No, this really resonates because it's like things that we have seen in the market as well. And I think here in the US also is like the access model right now. We've seen that there's certain kind of companies, value-based focus is huge, where when you can show actual impact, there is unlocks from the monetization, like from a monetization perspective. So like showing outcomes in different settings, such as an access model, you mentioned a model and program in Germany, etc. These are ways to actually monetize on this data. Like it drives business opportunities. And that's another big takeaway that I want to kind of point out here from the session is like it's not just a nice metric anymore, like a nice to have metric that provides some personalization or support to the user. It actually can drive real business outcomes because obviously everyone who's leading a company, who's building a company in fitness, wellness, health, we all, I think, are looking to do good for the people and improve the health and the well-being of the people. But we in the end need to make this work and companies have to function. So there is clear ways of, be it retention, churn reduction, tapping into new monetization opportunities, building premium offerings, tapping into reimbursable services, etc. We have seen CPT codes, so from the insurance side as well, moving towards more remote patient monitoring around sleep and sleep related diseases, and there is opportunities to tap into this as well. So there's plenty of opportunities opening up.
Yeah.
Before we dive a bit deeper, just one quick for the audience, real quick. We have 4 or 5 more minutes to go. If there's any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A section. We might have the chance to answer one or two. So in the bottom navigation bar, you find a QA section and you can drop any questions you have there. Sorry, Gil, you wanted to add something here.
Yeah. Look, eventually health outcomes which is what health and wellness platforms are paid for, depend on user engagement. You can have the most efficacious solution, clinically trialed and proven and published. If users don't like using it and users don't engage, it's kind of like Dan said, dropping the app is kind of like putting a wearable a device in the drawer. And one more thing that we haven't talked about is that the same platform that Sleep AI has today delivers on average 3 to 4 daily user engagements. Daily. We partner and talk with companies with tens of millions of users, and some of them have 5 engagements per month. And they're afraid it's going to become 4 and 3 and 2, and then they're no longer top of mind. So even if everything else, you could say, yeah, I could live with the data limitations, and I could live with not having enough data for everyone, and I could live without all of those other things that we've talked about. I'm asking, what can you do if your users walk into your app 3 to 4 times a day today, and how can you deliver more value to them and to your business through those visits?
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And preparing for closing, I think we have learned that people doesn't just want to know that they are doing something wrong. They need to know what they can do to change that, so they cannot get afraid and abandon the use of these applications or wearables. So we are getting into a point where there's a lot of data, a lot of data. So telling people insights about what to do, really simple changes, I think might improve engagement.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we're getting actually a first question here from the audience. Fabian is asking, how can I use sleep AI if I have sleep apnea? Are there any recommended settings, precautions, or features that work best for people with this condition?
Ellie, you want to take
I
that?
can answer. So one thing I'll say is, first and foremost, speak with your primary care physician and ensure that you're getting the proper treatment for your condition. We are not intended as a replacement for any kind of therapeutic approach that your doctor has prescribed. We're there sort of as we can support as an adjunct behavioral tool once you've already been treated. So, as we mentioned earlier, we have a behavior change platform. You can download the Sleep AI app, and it's the consumer-facing app, and you can use that to measure your sleep, get some sort of bespoke recommendations to improve your sleep, and that can be used again as an adjunct tool. But again, it's not a replacement for your primary therapy. We're not a medical device. Um, our goal is to ensure that people who don't already know that they have sleep apnea, for example, can get on the path towards a more formal diagnosis through screening tools. So it's great that you've been diagnosed. Hopefully, you're on treatment. If you're looking for additional behavioral tools, then that's where we can support you.
So, and I know we're coming up on time. There's another question I want to ask. I just want to, for the ones that will need to drop off here, because probably some of you in the audience need to drop off, we will share the recording of the session. We will share also contact information, but sleep.ai is where you clearly can find more information. You can also reach out to Gil and Ellie via LinkedIn. And for Rook, it's Rook, tryrook.io. But maybe we have a few more minutes, Ellie and Gil, because there's 2 more questions actually coming up. The next one comes from David and is, will Sleep AI do any sleep studies with proprietary device companies that are working to improve sleep? So I would interpret the question as if there is the idea of like working with companies that are in the device space. So think about like the companies that are actually providing medical devices to sleep laboratories, etc. Is there any studies that you're doing directly with the medical device companies? You mentioned just medical devices, Ellie, like as obviously Sleep AI is not considered a software as a medical device yet. Is that something
Yeah.
on the roadmap? Where do we stand here? Yeah.
Well, what I will say is that we have a very strong academic collaboration and partnership with 14 plus institutes from NASA to UNC Chapel Hill, UW, Washington State University. And we've run 250 plus studies on a range of things, whether it's products for companies that are looking to make some claims, or describing population sleep and circadian health in a way that's otherwise not possible with consumer sleep tech using our core measurement technology. So, um, I'll take that side. Whether or not we're willing to work with other technologies and proprietary devices. I mean, it depends on the use case. We're happy to learn a bit more and see if that might be a fit.
Yeah, there was one more question, Jonas, and maybe I'll just take 20 seconds to answer it. The question was, how do we help them? Do we do this for APIs? And the answer is yes. Essentially, everything that we just talked about is available for native integration, even with a React Native wrapper, if that's how you work, using our SDK and API. And given that integration is so easy, which is something that we've invested a lot to make it seamless and painless, there's essentially no justification for sleep blind and sleep aware companies to exist anymore. Like, everyone should be sleep activated. They can easily bring this into their solution and deliver better outcomes across the board.
Awesome. Yeah, and the same goes actually for ROOK, and Dan already dropped the message for ROOK in the chat as well. So yeah, API, webhooks, you can plug this in and leverage this within your existing tech stack for your users and clients.
Yeah, we use webhooks as well.
Yeah, awesome. Perfect. Dan, you wanted to add something, and then we're moving to a closing here.
No, just to thank you everyone for joining.
Okay, awesome. Well, sorry again for the technical difficulties in the beginning. This was cutting us short here a few minutes, but it was a pleasure having you both on the call today. Gil, Ellie, thanks so much for taking the time. We mentioned this in the beginning, so we wanted to set a bit the foundation here today. There's many more use cases we would love to explore, showcase, and expand on. So if this is relevant, in the follow-up email that we will send out, please drop us a message. We will make some emphasis there as well on potential next topics that we want to discuss. And it would be great to have everyone's, or like the audience, feedback here on this to see if it makes sense to jump on certain kind of use case in particular and expand a bit more. But I think there was a great session to set the foundations for this. So once again, thanks so much, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you. Wonderful. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.